You know, I really feel like we are truly living in the worst generation of video games practically ever. And there's going to be a reason why I say this. In the early 2020s, we were all locked inside of our homes, completely incapable of actually finding any GPU, CPU, or even game console without having to pay scalped prices. Immediately after that, we all had to deal with the insane NFT craze, raising the cost of GPUs at the exact same time. Now we're dealing with the ridiculous RAM crisis, where every major company is being impacted by Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix, and even ridiculous AI data centers gobbling up every piece of tech they possibly can. Everything from CPUs to SSDs to RAM to GPUs, anything you could possibly use is being siphoned off away from you, the customer and consumer. And now we're the ones paying for it. PlayStation just announced their price increase for their PS5 and PS5 Pro, hitting $650 for the base model, $900 for the Pro model. An absolute ridiculous thing to see, all because of the RAM crisis. The Steam machine has had its actual price point being delayed because of all this as well, and no one knows what it's going to cost or determine what Valve is going to in fact do. And even Nintendo isn't safe from this either, because later on in this video, we're going to see exactly what they're going to be dealing with as well. And with Microsoft, well, a lot of things can happen there, and nobody knows what's in fact going on right now. But the problem isn't the fact that we're dealing with the consequences of the RAM crisis. The bigger problem right now, though, is the fact that these companies want to keep it going. Because according to WCCF Tech, Samsung just raised its DRAM prices by 30% for Q2. Oh yeah, that's right. Samsung wants to keep that gravy train running, charging as much as possible across every other major company that needs their RAM to even function. And surprise, surprise, Samsung is one of the biggest manufacturers of RAM for basically your video game consoles, right next to SK Hynix and even Micron. You know, those three companies that control the entire world supply of DRAM in the first place? Samsung just went ahead and said, you know what? We're going to raise the price of RAM another 30% because clearly everybody needs it across every piece of technology, which means that every other company is going to take that DRAM that they have to pay for with Samsung and then use that to say, you know what? We can't absorb this cost. We got to increase our investor profits. So they're going to pass the cost down onto you. Surprise, an extra 30% on every piece of electronic that you ever wanted to purchase. With the article saying this, according to the South Korean publication ET News, Samsung is now supplying DRAM products at a quarter-over-quarter price premium of around 30%. Critically, these price increases come on the proverbial heels of a 100% year-over-year average price hike in Q1 2026. Do note that Samsung's latest 30% price increase represents an average price hike that spans multiple DRAM products, including high bandwidth memory or HBM for AI, as well as commodity DRAM for servers, PCs, and smartphones. What's more, now that Samsung appears to have instituted these price hikes, SK Hynix and Micron are also expected to follow suit with inflationary pricing for their own DRAM products, puncturing the ongoing thesis of a crash in the prices for commodity DRAM. That's right, we are in for an absolute world of hurt when these companies are literally controlling every single piece of flow of RAM available to you as a customer and even as a user in the video game space, causing price increases across the board to every other major company. And clearly, no one is safe. PlayStation wasn't safe. Xbox isn't safe, even though they have their own AI and data centers, and Nintendo and Valve even aren't safe either. Apple wasn't even safe because of this. Hell, even Apple's new MacBook is only set with 8 gigabytes of RAM, and they had to go through and double back to what's been going on to make things more efficient for using that limited amount of memory in the first place to keep prices down for available usage for, in fact, people to want to buy that specific MacBook. And that's exactly what's going to be happening in the future. We're going to have to be seeing other companies become far better at optimizing their games, their software or even their operating systems because of this issue happening, especially if these three companies like Samsung, Micron, and SK Hynix continue to raise prices quarter over quarter. The problem though is it's going to get worse because even Game Rant said this: console gaming used to be accessible to most people, but with the launch of modern systems, it now feels like a luxury that breaks the bank. And Game Rant is totally right. There are in fact people trying to proclaim that gaming is a luxury hobby when in reality it truly never has been. The entire point of consoles was to have a cheap entry point for people to purchase them and then sell them the software to recoup those costs of that cheap entry point or taking a loss on it. Right now though, we're not seeing that at all, with all these companies raising prices of components and then the console manufacturers passing on that actual price hike to you and not absorbing it. That seems to be the issue we're dealing with, because clearly even Nintendo isn't safe from this either. Because according to Dexerto, an ex-Nintendo sales lead says the Switch 2 prices will have to increase. Quote, even if they are able to make concessions in some areas, hardware prices are going to go up eventually. With the article saying this: amid the RAM and storage shortages, hardware production has been stretched pretty thin, with consoles like the PlayStation 5 increasing in price. Now, a former Nintendo sales lead has warned fans that the Nintendo Switch 2 could be following suit. Speaking on the Kit and Krista podcast, former Nintendo sales lead Sean explained why he's convinced a Switch 2 price increase is inevitable, saying, quote, unfortunately, I think eventually the hardware price is going to have to go up, explained Sean, adding that the company does seem to be attempting to mitigate the increases as best as they can. One prime example is their move on software, which is reportedly a way to make a hardware price increase a little bit more palatable. Notably, Nintendo has decided to make their digital games cheaper than the physical ones in the US to both encourage fans to buy digital and limit their production of cartridges due to the increased costs. And Sean's statement in that paragraph alone really determines exactly what everybody has been talking about. The fact that right now Nintendo literally created a physical games tax onto users that want to buy physical games in the first place. Basically saying, hey, if you want us to print this cartridge, you're going to have to pay 10 more bucks. Just go ahead and buy digital instead, so we don't have to make that kind of money back, and you can just buy the game on our store and be happy there and not have to deal with the price increase. The problem though is it's not going to mitigate what's actually happening with a 30% markup on Samsung's RAM alone. And if SK Hynix and Micron follow suit, it's not going to be enough to bypass everybody else not dealing with physical carts or even game key cards and having to buy more hardware at a higher price. People have talked about the amount of console sales that companies make, about how much money these companies are making by selling all this hardware. Yet all we keep seeing instead isn't prices going down, but in fact prices keep continually rising, basically exposing that we were never supposed to have cheaper hardware in the first place, that all companies kept doing was trying to figure out other ways of monetizing you. Even when a piece of hardware like the Switch 2 that sells millions of units so early on in its life cycle is still susceptible to this kind of price increase, it goes to show that everybody is unsafe in this space right now, and everybody can be impacted. Exactly what I've been talking about for the past 6 months or so on this channel. And that's really the incredibly terrifying part about all of this. You're going to be seeing everything increase, and one of two things is going to happen. Either developers are going to have to get better with what their games look like and how their games perform, or we're going to be falling into our entirely horrible future where you're going to own nothing and being happy. And I'm going to put happy in quotations because nobody wants that at all. The article continues by saying this: however, as Sean added, even if they are able to make concessions in some areas, hardware prices are going to go up, I think, eventually. He did assure fans that, quote, they may be able to put off raising hardware prices for a moment, thanks to the production of Nintendo merch and other sales from other products that aren't hardware. But he did warn fans that he thinks it's inevitable they're going to go up for the first time. And honestly, I would not be surprised if we see the Switch 2 with a $50 price increase, or dare I even say the $100 price increase, going from $449 to $500 or $449 to $550 in order to go ahead and actually be competitive in what's going on in the space right now with everything happening with all the other DRAM manufacturers. Hell, even in this space at this exact moment in time, yesterday it turns out that the Xbox ROG Ally, the non-X, got a price decrease of $100. I don't know how they pulled this off, but it's actually in line with what you would get with the 512 Steam Deck OLED model. And in this economy, that is actually insane to see right now, especially a company like Asus, who normally overcharges for everything. Hell, even IGN posted this tweet the other day, showcasing the kind of prices and price decreases we've had ever since the PlayStation 1. I mean, watching the console go from $299 to $99, and then the PS2 go from $299 to $129, the PS3 $600 to $269, the PS4 $399 to $199, and instead we see the opposite. The PS5 go from $499 to $650. These price increases are absolutely insane after decades of watching hardware that effectively gets older become less expensive over time. But instead, we're seeing the actual opposite, and I feel like it's going to drive a wedge into a lot of people and what their buying habits are going to be moving forward, and how companies are going to capitalize on this. With the NCS Master saying this, it's a horrifying sign of the economy that being an early adopter is now the preferable and cheaper option. And I really feel like NCS Master is actually correct. What you're seeing right now are people being trained to go ahead and say, you know what, I'm not going to pay higher prices again after 5 or 6 years like we've normally had prices drop over time. What I'm going to do instead right now is buy the new shiny thing day one at the price that they're quoting it at, so that way I don't get screwed later on in life. And I think that's going to be impacting everybody in the future moving forward. I think what companies are trying to do is now the opposite, passing on those prices onto you as a customer and consumer and forcing you to pay those prices rather than going around and eating that cost and saying, you know what, we want to increase our user base. Instead, we're going to go ahead and see the actual user base shrink over time, and people are going to be stuck with either older hardware or hardware that isn't being supported anymore, or they're going to go around and pay that exorbitant price for that new tech. And the problem is going to be this. We're seeing that tech being pushed harder every single time. And even then, with people not being able to afford that new technology, it's going to be difficult for games to in fact even run. But it looks like Valve may be showcasing exactly what people in fact truly need, especially on the PC gaming space, and even more so for their Steam machine on top of it. Hopefully, this will help buck the trend of everything happening in gaming. Because according to the Gameverse, it says this: Steam will soon show the estimated FPS before you buy a game based on your PC specs and data from users with similar hardware, spotted by user Dex3108 via Steam's database. And this is why Valve and Steam are the absolute best in the industry. What they're doing right now is exactly what people need to see. With games becoming far more power hungry and hardware getting even more expensive, a lot of people want to make sure that their games will run on their hardware before shelling out that money to even have it be purchased in the first place. And this also ties in directly with the Steam machine as well. Even though we're seeing the potentiality of other companies increasing their prices and costs, and even the Steam machine being a very expensive item, this could be the one facet that people truly need to say, you know what, if I'm going to spend $500 to $1,000 on something where I don't even know is going to work, or I'm stuck with one specific kind of operating system or even an ecosystem, I might as well move to the Steam machine and have true actual consumer advocacy for myself and what I want to get, and even know exactly what I'm going to buy before I even get to purchase it. This is exactly what people need, especially with things like DDR4 and even DDR3 becoming even far more popular due to the RAM price increases and having far more availability in the space right now. If Valve can get the actual price of the Steam machine locked into a good space, you could be seeing a lot of people sit there and say, why am I going to pay $900 for a Pro, or $650 for a PS5, or $700 for an Xbox, or even $550 for a Switch 2 when I can get a Steam machine that is literally in the middle of the performance of the pack, but also has the Steam ecosystem, Steam OS, but also provides me as a better experience, not only as a gamer, but in fact as an actual customer in this space, knowing exactly what I'm going to be getting with my purchase. But there's more though, because Insider Gaming's article even said this. Spotted by The Gamer, Steam had revealed details about gathering frame rate data through a blog post last month. The gathering of data would be optional and will be stored without connection to the player's Steam account. It could be identified through the kind of hardware the player was using and would be used to, quote, learn about game compatibility and improve Steam. Now more updates have been spotted towards the features. A new post by Lambda Gen on Twitter discusses new data from Roadrunner on SteamDB. The post features code that mentions a frame rate estimator and a description for it. Select an app and a PC config to get a chart of estimated frame rates based on the frame rates of other Steam users. The feature is currently in beta, but will eventually help players estimate frame rates using data collected from players with similar systems. This is absolutely massive, and it's exactly what people are afraid of when moving to PC, and why so many users are going around and buying all the high-end gear because they want all the high-end frame rates or high-end falutin graphics. The problem is now, though, because of what's been happening previously in the video with Samsung increasing prices, Nintendo possibly increasing prices as well, and PlayStation and Xbox doing the exact same thing, it's becoming more expensive to even get into any sort of gaming whatsoever, regardless of whatever platform you want to play on. Valve doing this is giving a lot of people exactly what's needed. Back in the day, you had to use websites like Can You Run It or something like that, where it would take information from your PC and then use the average of what the minimum requirements were of the game and then determine whether or not you could in fact run that video game. Now, Valve is just going to do it themselves with data from other users as well. This totally impacts the Steam machine, saying like, look, this game will run with these frame rates and this resolution on the Steam machine as per other users, or on your older PC as well, or on your newer PC, so you can clearly see what kind of frame rate you're going to get before you even purchase the product. And this puts the onus not on Valve and not on the actual consumers, but in fact back onto the publishers and developers. It's going to force them to say, we need to start optimizing our games for lower end hardware, for hardware like the Steam machine or something in the middle, since people won't be able to upgrade anytime in the future because of the cost of RAM and even hardware in the first place, constantly getting price increases. If companies start to see that the games don't sell because they're not well optimized, what they'll do is they'll offer other incentives instead, which is where I fear things are going to go. Things like Game Pass cloud streaming, or even GeForce Now, where you have the power of the 5090 running the server, streaming the game to you directly, avoiding all that really messy hardware kind of stuff, all that overly expensive things that of games you don't even really own because they're adding a physical game tax to it. Why even concern yourself with that in the first place, right? Just go ahead and join our streaming service and play the games that way at their highest fidelity and better frame rates, even though the bitrate will be chewed to all hell and back, and you'll have to pay your ISP even more money while everybody else tries to gouge you and Netflix raises their pricing on top of that. Oh, and don't forget that Xbox is possibly teasing an ad-supported tier of Game Pass Cloud, and at the same time, GeForce Now is now monitoring how many minutes you spend playing a video game. So we're back to the old 90s and early 2000s of America Online, where you're being charged per minute of using the internet. Either do that or pay $2,000 for basically just an old piece of tech in the first place and never have any game whatsoever run on your piece of hardware because developers aren't making games for it either. You gotta love it! But this step done by Valve is exactly what so many consumers in fact need. True transparency and understanding whether or not their game will run. And yes, it definitely is because of their Steam machine coming out in fact very soon. But this helps so many other people playing on PC with their own hardware understand exactly what their machine is going to do, and will help that customer determine whether or not their hard-earned money should go to that dev, especially if the game doesn't run well in the first place. And that's going to be the huge thing and that is why I'm so excited about what Valve is doing, not only with the Steam machine, but also with these new updates. And it really goes ahead and shines a light in the face of every other major game company and every other major game provider, showing them how to, in fact, run a company for the consumer first, where people will look and say, if I'm going to spend $500 to $800 on a console for next generation, or even $1,000, why am I going to put it in a company that isn't giving me what I actually deserve, true information, and where I can spend my money? I think that even though the Steam machine may be lower powered than other future devices, I feel like what's going to be happening is people are going to see what Steam in fact does, how they're providing their services, and will be using Steam instead for a lot more as well. With the rumors of the Steam Deck 2, the Steam machine coming out later this year, and everything else happening, people are starting to look at Valve and saying, you know what? Why am I dealing with all these price increases? Why am I dealing with all these physical game taxes? Why am I dealing with all this bullshit by these other companies raking me over a coal every single time? And I think that's where people are going to get fed up. And even if the Steam machine costs $750 to $800, I think people will look at it and say, you know what? The value I'm getting out of this box from this company is way higher than any other value by spending an extra $100 on another piece of tech that literally will go up in price again later on a few years down the line, because these companies would rather put their shareholders on a pedestal instead of the customer. And that's why I think everybody is terrified of what Steam is going to be doing this year, and why I feel like what's going to be happening is you're going to be seeing a lot of people who never thought about PC gaming slowly start to move over and see what Valve has been doing for the past 20 years. But you know what? I want to hear what you guys got to say about this in the comments section down below. Do you think the Switch 2 is going to get a price increase? Do you think with this new functionality that the Steam machine will be far more enticing to other players? And do you think Valve is putting themselves in a position to basically dominate the industry? I want to hear what you guys got to say. And speaking about what you got to say, here in fact is the comment of the day from Friday's video, with Ace 11 Sky saying this: they want to make it a luxury product while being entirely unwilling to make it luxury quality. What's that mean with that rapper writing down words on a piece of paper while everything is on fire? That's literally you, my boy. Ace 11, that's exactly what these companies are trying to do. They want to make it appear as if it's a luxury item, but yet the quality doesn't match the price tag, and they'll keep raising that price on you every single time. Hopefully Valve can help set this record straight and really adjust what's happening right now in the gaming industry. But we'll see what happens when that Steam machine launches and the price that we're all going to have to pay. But as always, if you want to see more of this kind of content though, more PC port reviews, gaming news, my hot takes in the gaming industry, Steam Deck videos, and fanboy content, subscribe to the channel. If you want Discord access or emotes during live streams, become a YouTube member. It's as low as $1. And look, if you don't want to spend the buck, don't worry about it. Every Saturday night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, live right here on the channel, I wear a banana suit and get insulted by everybody with TTS. Trust me, it's a hell of a live show. You don't want to miss it. I stream every Saturday night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern, right here on the channel. It's wild. Trust me. Oh, and if you want even more content, check out my second channel as well. It's called Oh No, It's Alex Gaming, right here. Link to that channel is in the description down below as well if you want to check it out. Videos go up every single Monday, but I couldn't put one up this Monday because of the holiday, so definitely go check it out. With all that being said though, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you have a great one, and I'll see you gooners next time. Peace!